Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for a Sunday special of Swinging for the Fences. We have ourselves a pretty fantastic show today as we welcome Rooftop Sports, another Seattle sports content creator, to the show. We're going to talk about the Mariners series with the Houston Astros, and we're going to talk about creating content as well. It should be a fun show, so stick around. Let's have some fun today.
Let's do it.
There you go! Left field! We got a tie ball game! Julio! Oh, baby, what a moment!
They win the ball game 2-1, and the Mariners are going to the playoffs as a playoff contender. The magic carpet ride continues. This ball club has been amazing all season long.
That's so awesome, man. I can't get over that opening because, you know, it's the ability to mix the old with the new. So if you're a longtime Seattle Mariners fan, you obviously remember the old, you know, KCT Channel 11 opening, the old Cairo opening, and of course
Cairo definitely did it.
Yeah. And then you get the clips of the some of the best moments of the last couple of years. But anyways, today it is the Sunday special, and I want to thank everyone for stopping by. If you want to join us, of course, you can catch the live stream here on YouTube. And if you do join us in the YouTube chat room, go ahead and click the subscribe button. We definitely would appreciate it. Or you can check it out. The link is available on X. At my Twitter handle @SwingingPod. There's multiple ways, so stick around, have some fun. Let's talk some baseball. As I mentioned before the opening, we are joined by Rooftop Sports. He was kindly able to come down off his rooftop and hang around with the little people today. So I definitely appreciate you stopping by, man. How you doing?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, and makes it better when the Mariners won the series against Houston. And boy, I was concerned after Friday, but the Mariners somehow figured it out.
Yeah, I will say that this was kind of an interesting game, you know, considering coming off the heels of probably the best start any starter had this season. You know, Logan Gilbert goes 8 innings the night before and literally just has, I can't remember the last time a starter had that dominant of a start. The Mariners get off to a quick start today. They're up 3-0. They give up a pair of 2-run home runs to the Astros, and it's looking like maybe the Astros are going to be the team taking 2 out of 3. And then, of course, Luis Urias with the ugliest clutch swing that I've ever seen, scoring Demo from second, and then Cal Raleigh into the crawfish boxes out there in left field in Houston. Mariners win 5-4. That was literally a Houdini escape. I don't know how even to explain it. That they just pulled a rabbit out of their ass on that one. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They've won 6 straight series. Before we get into it, I'm kind of curious to see how you feel about this, though. Again, the Mariners were bailed out with the long ball, and I'm just kind of curious. You know, you watch this team. You've been around for quite a while now. There's multitudes of ways that you can score runs, and it seems to me like over the course of the last couple of years, the Mariners literally are sitting back and waiting for the 3-run home run. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Today, it definitely worked out. You know, how do you feel about the fact that the Mariners seemingly can't win ball games unless they hit a home run?
It's not sustainable because look at Houston. Like, as much as they've been struggling, they still have a top 10 offense in baseball, because when you saw how Houston scored, most of it wasn't even relied on by home runs. Like, it all sometimes even came down to Altuve with a bunt. Yordan Alvarez at least got on base with a bunt. Yordan Alvarez, out of all players, gets a bunt single. And I remember last year, I was agreeing with everyone that the Mariners were living and dying by the home run last year. But it seems that 2024, they're just taking it to a whole new level. And of course, what's bailing them out is the most unprecedented starting pitching that we have ever seen. Like even better than last year, because even 23, when it was considered unprecedentedly good, it was still plagued with at least Marco Gonzalez and Chris Flexen at the start.
Yeah.
And now, and the bullpen, well, the bullpen was the bullpen last year, and the bullpen it's still really good even without Brash and Santos, but can that sustain? I don't know, because you never know if anyone gets injured in the starting rotation or the bullpen. And if that's the case, then the offense really won't have much room for error. And if the Mariners were to make the playoffs, or even before that, or if they played teams with a better starting rotation, then that's where we're going to see that the Mariners will literally die by no home runs. Unless they figure out a way to play small ball, like bunting once in a while, or Julio just not chasing the freaking ball. Because I think we agree that if Julio and Polanco don't just keep chasing it so much, Mariners would be having a much more comfortable lead in the division.
Are you suggesting that Julio and Polanco chase a lot of balls? Is that what you're suggesting, that this team can't go unless Julio Rodriguez is on point? Is that like, I completely agree with you 100%. So, the crazy thing is that it almost seems like the attitude of Scott Servais is literally, our pitching is better than any team in the league, and it's okay if we strike out 10 times a game if one or two guys hits a solo shot, because our pitching is so good and our pitching is so deep that a 2-run lead or a 3-run lead is good enough. And as you mentioned, you're absolutely right. The Houston Astros definitely have multiple ways that they can sting you. As a matter of fact, in that first game of the series, it was a bunt or a base hit, or they'll generate a walk, and they got two runs on, and there's a base hit scoring one, there's a double that scores another, and all of a sudden you look up and the Astros are leading 4-0, and there was no long ball a part of that equation. It's the ability of just being able to put bat to ball and take exactly what the pitcher is willing to give you. And you look at the type of at bats that the Mariners have been putting up. 3/4 of the at bats per 27 outs are fucking disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is disgusting. Like, and let's not even mention the whole Cal Raleigh when he threw the ball at third base to try to pick the guy off, because it was a very high pressure situation, and it backfired heavily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. It's like, when you saw what the Mariners did this offseason by bringing in Polanco, by bringing back Haniger, signing Garver, it was a signal that they were going to change the way that they were going to play offense. They went out and got high contact guys that had traditionally had OBP guys, and yet the season starts and it's the exact same offense as last year. Maybe a little bit better players, but for the most part, the philosophy of controlling the zone and identifying pitches, putting yourself in good fastball counts and being able to do damage. The only problem is they're not hitting the fastball this year. It seems
which
like
is really bizarre.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Definitely.
Yeah. And and there's fans out there, including I've said it myself, that we shouldn't have traded away Suarez, I was still okay getting rid of Teoscar, but there are also Mariner fans that say, we should have gave Teoscar that qualifying offer. But I think we agree that even if Suarez was here, even if Teoscar and Kelenic were here, it'd be the same exact thing. Yep.
And I think I think their success, especially Teoscar, it's completely from a different approach. The Dodgers are a little bit more aggressive. Not to mention the fact that Teoscar is surrounded by dudes that absolutely crush the baseball. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. So he's not the guy in the lineup that's reliant upon leading your team. He can just relax and be the other guy in the lineup. And of course, the other guy is having a pretty good start to the season. But I definitely agree with you. If they were back in Seattle, it would be more of the same. But that being said, all things considered, they have won their 6th straight series, and last time I checked, the Texas Rangers and the Kansas City Royals were tied at 2 going into the bottom of the 9th. So if the Royals can pull this one off, the Mariners will probably have a 1.5 game lead in the standings, which is actually quite surprising considering that this team is led by its pitching staff, not so much its offense. It's just, there's an old adage in golf, which is like 2 bad shots and 1 good shot equals par. And that seems like the Seattle Mariners, where it's, you can have a lineup that strikeouts 12 times, but as long as one guy steps into a pitch and drives it to left field, that's good enough because our pitching is so goddamn good.
Yeah. And the pitching that we've seen is just absolutely, I already said it, unprecedented. Like, yes, Castillo, he had a tough start, but he's been picking it up quite a bit. Logan Gilbert has actually exceeded my expectations. Like, I did not expect him to have a start like that. Bryce Miller, if only he just removed at least a couple home runs, he would be just as up there as Logan Gilbert. And let's not mention that George Kirby also has fantastic starts as well. Let's not forget about his 12 strikeout performance last week, and also another fantastic performance on Friday. Had he just maybe pitched one more inning. Now that we did hear developments that maybe George Kirby has a knee problem, which we still haven't seen anything legitimate yet. So until we see any of those legitimate reports, I still think at least Service should have put in Ryan Stanek or anyone not named Trent Thornton. Now, don't get me wrong, Thornton is a great pitcher, just not in a situation like that.
Right. He's not exactly a high leverage guy compared to a guy like Ryan Stanek, who, by the way, pitched today, and he pitched beautifully today as well too. You mentioned the rotation. At the beginning of the season, when everybody was talking about their favorites for AL Cy Young Award, I know a lot of lists came out for Major League Baseball, and George Kirby's name was mentioned, as rightfully it should be, because George Kirby's a phenomenal pitcher. But the guy that, especially in our prediction show, when Swanee and I were doing our picks, and the question of who do you think is going to be the team Cy Young Award winner, on top of potentially being in, high in the top 5 of the AL Cy Young Award, I said Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert from day one to me had ace written all over him. Now, if you remember back in 2022, he was more fastball oriented. Last year, he introduced a couple secondary pitches, and now it seems like everything is refined, because Logan Gilbert to me is dialed in, where a guy like Luis Castillo can have, a rough start to the season. He can get himself back into gear, but what you're going to get from Luis Castillo. And the same thing with Kirby. Kirby's phenomenal, but it just seems that Logan Gilbert is at that point right now where that dude is dialed in, locked in. It doesn't look like it. To me, it doesn't look like he's gonna have a problem all season long. I actually think that Logan Gilbert probably is going to be the guy who's going to be there at the end, and who's probably going to be the Mariners starter. That's probably going to be in the top 3 for AL Cy Young Award. What do you think about that?
I mean, now to think of it, Logan Gilbert, if we see it, as much as George Kirby is still my guy, Logan he is my guy. Even when he said, I don't want to play in the 7th inning last year, which pretty much, I think I'd killed the entire season momentum wise. But Logan I think he is, like you said, he's really put it together. And he also seems to be the most mature out of all of them. Like he seems like he's shown that he is more of a leader than everyone else. I mean, I will say that Kirby's the more talented, but Logan, I didn't even expect him to have a start that he is having. Like, I thought starting the season he was going to be the 3rd guy, but now he's creeping to be the 2nd or the 1st guy. Because I think maybe a year or 2 from now, I could see either Kirby and Logan fighting for that number 1 spot, which is a great problem to have, of course. But maybe there could be some changes in the rotation where you may put George Kirby and Logan Gilbert wherever in the 1st. Luis Castillo may be the 3rd at this point, because as great as he is, he's also I think he's our most streaky starter now.
For sure. I don't know, man. It just seems like he's got the air of a guy that's been around for 10 years already. You know what I mean? Like Logan has that confidence of a dude that's already, that's been there and done it. the type of guy that when he walks into his room, his dick has been there for 3 minutes already. You know what I mean? That dude is just confident, just nothing but next level confidence. But all right. The cool thing about having you on is you do a multitude of things that I absolutely enjoy. It's not just the Mariner content you put out, but you also been doing a lot of Sonics content as well too. And for all those that have been around, Seattle sports for a very, very, very long time, obviously remembers the Sonic heydays of the 90s. And I like that. You're doing a lot of shout outs to the green and gold. I want to start by asking you, what was the want and need to do your throwback content?
I mean, I started much of my content, other than talking about Mariners of 22 and 23 back then. It did also start off with Mariners nostalgic videos, and some of them did very well. Like, I made the Butterfly Effect video on how the Mariners got Yordan Alvarez to the Astros, and that was through the 2 Eric Bedard trades. Crazy or not, it took 2 Eric Bedard trades to make that happen. And I also noticed in the Mariners nostalgia, the 2000 Mariners season and the 95, the post 95, couple things that are forgotten in Mariners nostalgia is, other than 95 being a fantastic season that saved baseball, not many people understand what happened after 95. Like, you talk to many fans, they're going to say, oh yeah, 95 was a great season. But nobody seems to remember what happened after 95. So I made that video about the Tino Martinez trade.
Martinez deal. Yeah.
That was a horrible deal. That's what built the dynasty, and nobody remembers that, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, it's not even just the Tino Martinez deal, but they also let Mike Blowers walk to the Dodgers. And that was actually the beginning of, a lot of people don't realize that was the beginning of the end for Ken Griffey Jr. As far as like mentally being dialed in with the Mariners, because obviously there's also the A-Rod, the A-Rod situation that was creeping up on him. But the fact was that was Junior's first taste of the postseason in 95. And of course it was a phenomenal run. He has one of the best divisional series in the history of divisional playoff play against the Yankees. But when you're coming off a season like that, where you erase a 12-game lead, you get into the playoffs, you basically come within a game of the World Series. The last thing you want to see your team do is trade away one of your best players in Tino Martinez to the team that you just beat in the playoffs, because that was, it wasn't just Tino Martinez, but it was also Jeff Nelson as well too. Those two get dealt, and those were the missing pieces, the final 2 missing pieces, which ended up being the Yankee dynasty. Absolutely.
It was. And then continuing on, like, also the 2000 Mariners season is also heavily buried in nostalgia, because that was actually their closest and best opportunity for the World Series. Because who would you rather go against? Mike Piazza and Al Leiter of the New York Mets, or in 95, you're going up against the big 3-headed monsters of Glavine, Maddox, and there was one more.
Oh, Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, and I think Steve
that's before I even bring up Marquise Grissom and Chipper Jones when he was a young guy. And then for 2001, they would have had to go up against Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson, which I think the 01 team would have lost in that World Series as well.
Oh, 100%.
I think it would have not been a 7-game series. I'll say that. But yeah,
for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. A lot of it gets 2000 gets buried. Because obviously, in 2001, you have Ichiro's rookie year. Brett Boone comes back to Seattle, and they chase the record, they tie it, and then they barely get past Cleveland in the playoffs, and then they're basically embarrassed by the Yankees in the LCS. But 2000, when you look at that season, that was Pat Gillick's first year in Seattle, and when you look at that team, it was really a Lou Piniella team. It was a veteran carried team. And a lot of people forget Ricky Henderson was on that squad as well too. And you saw what that team was able to do, grab the wild card. I think they grabbed the wild card on the last day of the season.
They did.
And they get in and sweep the Chicago White Sox right out of the playoffs. And I think a lot of people were thinking that this team was ready to take that step, because I actually thought the 2000 Mariners were a lot better even though that the Yankees were, the defending World Series, two-time defending World Series champion three times in 4 years. I actually thought the Mariners had a very good chance of beating the Yankees. I actually thought they were a little bit better than the Yankees. I thought Mariners had better pitching.
And I also think that it's kind of hidden too, that no one talks about the competition the Yankees had in the American League Championship Series, because 96, they routed the Baltimore Orioles. Now you can thank Jeffrey Mayer, and I got to get back to the Sonics thing eventually, but Jeffrey Mayer with catching a ball. And then 98, they played Cleveland, which that was a beatable team. 99, they pretty much steamrolled the Red Sox. So I think in that entire American League Championship Series, Mariners were the ones that gave them the most trouble.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of people forget that A-Rod had a hell of an LCS that year as well too. Clutch
he did, and don't forget.
Yep.
And that was his only season where he had a 10+ wins above replacement out of all. Even his 50+ home run seasons couldn't even get to that.
Right. And of course that, the debacle that ensued post postseason with A-Rod in his wanting to play for a contending team. And of course the Mariners and Mets were the two teams that were on that list of prospective teams. And then of course he chooses the Texas Rangers and $252 million, which I don't blame him, by the way. If somebody, if a major league team was offering me the richest contract in baseball history, I don't think I would turn that down.
Live in a much cheaper state of Texas. Can't blame him for that.
Can't blame him for it.
Yep. No. And now back to the whole Sonics desires is, well, also my name is Rooftop Sports, not just Rooftop Mariner. It was actually Rooftop Mariner at the start, but then I decided to branch out because no hard feelings on other Mariner content creators, but there are just so many on the way coming out. Like I feel like there's new ones coming out all the time, and I'm not trying to say I can't compete with them or try to grow with them or anything, but also I don't want to necessarily put the Mariners on a pedestal for my content creating future, because I also want to be there if the Sonics ever come back. And there's also a lot of nostalgic things in Sonics history that's also missing. Like the 2004-2005 Sonic season was heavily forgotten because of everything that happened after that, and that Gary Payton wasn't on the team anymore, I guess. So the love of the Sonics kind of faded away by the time Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis tried to do their thing. And when I looked up all the YouTube videos about Sonics nostalgia, almost nobody talks about it. Like they all talked about like Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, but there's a lot of like uncovered things that I feel like that I'm looking forward to express about. And I do have another video on the works after the video of the 2004-5 Sonics. Now, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to give it away, but it is I will say it's going to be somewhere in the 90s, of course.
Okay. I was going to ask you for a hint. I was going to be like, come on, man, don't leave the audience hanging. No, what's funny is you bring up an interesting point, because the 04-05 Seattle Super, that was their last division title. But it was also shrouded in a lot of drama, considering at that point in time, Howard Schultz was trying to lobby the city and the state for funding for, either a new arena or a key arena remodel money. And of course, nobody knew that on the literally the very next year they would be sold to Clay Bennett. And so that was really on the heels of that. And of course, you're absolutely right. When Gary Payton was traded, that was it. That was the end of an era.
That's when they lost their name pretty much.
Because a lot of people associated the Supersonics with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. Everybody remembers the come up. Everybody remembers 92, 93. The two first round playoff exits against the Nuggets and the Lakers. And then of course you have the NBA Finals appearance in 1996. So I mean, that there was a time where the Seattle Supersonics were the hottest ticket in town next to Washington Husky football. Even so when the Mariners were doing their thing in 95, you could always count on the Key Arena to be completely full for every single Sonic home game. The crazy thing about it was that 2000, because the best part about the 2004 2005 Sonics is outside of Ray Allen, outside of the marquee name, it was a bunch of workman-like blue-collar type guys. Vladimir Radmanovich, Danny Fortson, Reggie
Jerome
Evans, Jerome James. And it's like, a lot of those guys on the team were essentially no names around the league. And, for one season, they were able to play some very phenomenal basketball and win a division. That was really like the last gasp of Sonic basketball, as anybody remembered it, because, we all know exactly what happened literally 1 year later.
It was also the rise of those. I've noticed that also after that season, that's when Reggie Evans got his name known, that he had the reputation of being a rebounder. Even Nick Collison got a good reputation of being a fantastic player who doesn't necessarily give you the numbers, but he'll set that screen and leave open shots. And he was a hustler.
Nick Collison was an unbelievable hustler, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Luke Ridenour on that team as well too?
Luke Ridenour was the point guard. Yeah. He was part of he was the draft pick that became Luke Ridenour through that Gary Payton trade.
My guy on those teams was a 7-foot center from Bakersfield, California. He came straight from high school. And I thought he was going to be so dope, man. Robert Swifty was my guy, man. A lot of people gave Swifty shit because he turned out to be complete shit. I mean, it was what it was. I mean, he was out of basketball. He was out of basketball insanely quick. But, he was that dopey, opie looking white dude from Bakersfield, California, who was getting garbage time minutes in his rookie year. And, he never really attributed it too much, but not a lot of people remember Robert Swift, but Swifty was my guy, man.
I looked up his numbers in 05 and 06. He had a little bit more playing time. That's when he actually did show a little bit of upside, but his body, no one kind of remembers that his body also betrayed him. And I think that may have had something to do with that. He had problems committing to himself. But when he looked at his numbers, at least like with a small sample size, he was at least blocking shots. He could play little defense, but that was about it. But he couldn't really do anything else to make himself any useful for the team.
And the problem with 7-footers is they always have knee injuries, and that was no Robert Swift also dealt with knee injuries that ultimately ended his career. But I will say this though, that when I think about those Sonic teams, especially the next year they bottom out, and that leads to the Sonics getting the number 2 overall pick, which ended up being Kevin Durant. And of course, the last season in Sonic history, we got to witness Kevin Durant on one of the worst teams imaginable. I believe Kurt Thomas was on that team as well too. Managed by, I think the head coach was PJ Carlesimo, who who is widely remembered as the guy that Latrell Sprewell choked out at Golden State, former Villanova head coach. And that's, to me, that, when I look back at that season, and I'm like, basically to be able to get that collection and get back into the playoffs as the last gaps. And then you see, as the Sonics are leaving Seattle, and you see the you see the groundwork of what would ultimately become in Oklahoma City. Oh, so disappointing, man. To this day, I still look back on it and I still get angry, because I just definitely believe that Seattle was robbed all the way around in that situation. It's still hard for me to stomach, because it wasn't just a robbery of Howard Schultz, selling the city of Seattle out, but it was also the fact that we didn't get to witness the come up of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook,
Serge Ibaka.
We didn't get to see.
It is very disappointing, yeah. But there was a silver lining when the Sonics did leave, and not everyone got the privilege to feel it. But had the Sonics never leave, I would have not learned about how the business and the politics work in the world of sports. And I was actually I was partially part of the whole Chris Hansen thing, where I was trying to help lobby for a stadium. I was always going to those city hall meetings to speak up and always telling friends about the whole thing. And a lot of people actually depended on me for information. So that was a pretty cool experience. And I actually got to make amazing connections through it. So, yes, I am
There
one
you
of those
go.
lucky few that actually did benefit from a very tragic event. But hopefully,
We'll
everything
get it.
that happened will all pay off, and hopefully
Yep.
the NBA will figure out their NBA TV deal where NBC is
Yep.
trying to make a comeback. So there will be two opportunities for some nostalgic returns: NBA on NBC and the Seattle Supersonics coming back. And the NBA needs both of that because the NBA
Sure.
these days are it's very unwatchable. No one plays
Yeah.
defense,
Yep.
and ratings are declining. Like, I don't even know one person's even talking about the playoffs.
Yeah. That's
So
you're
the
at,
NBA
you're
desperately needs they definitely
yeah.
need those two assets of nostalgia to come back because Sonics still have a
Well,
very attractive name.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. The big thing about today's NBA is nobody watches their All-Star game. Nobody even pays attention to the regular season. And we're in the playoffs already. And I don't hear anybody talking about the NBA playoffs unless you're just a diehard NBA fan.
I
And
think
that's a
the
stark
only way
contract.
the NBA gets their attention back, at least temporarily, is if Oklahoma goes on a deep run. That will certainly get Sonics fans' attention. So they'll blow up Twitter saying,
Sure.
"We got screwed, screw Oklahoma." So I
But
guess
at,
for
but
the
at least
NBA,
but at least that you still see Sonic fans still caring about it. But the one thing that plays into Seattle fans is the fact that the lockout, the COVID lockouts, really affected the NBA's bottom line to the point where if there are going there, you're not going to expand by one, you're going to expand by two, and expansion fees are going to be as high as $5 billion. So for the other 32 teams in the league, or however many teams are now in the NBA, each owner is going to get a nice solid chunk of that on top of the new television deal, which is going to be financially lucrative for every team in the league, including the two new teams. But going back to the lockout of 98-99, which is right on the cusp before Barry Ackerley sells the Sonics. A lot of people don't realize that lockout was that it brought in max contracts into the NBA where players can get max contracts. And when you look at how Seattle even got the Key Arena remodel, Barry Ackerley had to enter in basically a one-sided lease agreement to get the bonds, to get the city to issue the bonds to redo Key Arena. And, prior to that lockout, it was fine because, he was able to make a profit. But after that, it became very clear that was not something that he wanted to do. And he sold the team to Howard Schultz. And one of the things that people don't realize is that Howard Schultz didn't have that Key Arena lease examined. He thought he was going to be able to come in and run his business like Starbucks. And he quickly realized that, that wasn't going to be a case because, he on one hand, he has this Key Arena lease that's not allowing him and his investors to make money. And on the other side of the coin, it's like, how are you going to get free agents to come to Seattle when you're losing money on the other side of the coin? And, he tried to get the city of Seattle to renegotiate. They told him to kick rocks. And that ultimately led to him selling the team. And, I can respect Barry Ackerley for having the foresight. He saw it coming a million miles away. And I guess there's always a sucker, there's always a sucker out there that's willing to take on a sinking ship. And, that was Howard Schultz.
really was the whole timing was just awful. Like everything that would go wrong. And also, not going to blame the Seahawks or the Mariners, but the fact that those two teams got their stadiums at the skin of their teeth also didn't help, because that's where the attitude went. The state already did do their funding, like, hey, we funded these two stadiums. Why are we funding the third one? So I think there was just that whole stadium thing. The whole stadium thing was a problem before it even started. Like, it started on day one when the Seattle Coliseum was actually supposed to be a temporary facility for the 62 World's Fair. But because that event went so well, that's where the NBA was like, hey, you have a cool city. You want an NBA team?
Yeah. And the Sonics came in without any fanfare. That was when Sam Schulman brought a team to Seattle. It came without any fanfare. Nobody even really realized it at first. The crazy thing though is that you're absolutely right. By the time the Sonics came around asking for money, Seattle had stadium fatigue. And if you remember, the Mariners strong-armed King County for Safeco Field, T-Mobile Park. A lot of people forget about that because that initiative was voted down by the voters in Seattle.
It was voted down when I think Ken Griffey Jr. hit that game winner.
Yeah, the citizens of Seattle said no, we don't want to have any type of tax hike. And then, of course, the Mariners basically said, listen, either, went to the county and said, listen, either you make this happen or we're moving to Tampa Bay or whatever the hell they were talking about moving to. And, of course, Gary Locke, then King County executive, made it happen. And it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But at least you can say Paul Allen had the decency to come at the citizens of Seattle correctly and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be paying for half of the stadium and I'll take care of the cost overruns. We just would like the other half. He wanted it a 50-50 proposition and it passed. So at least, Paul Allen had the decency to come to the citizens of Seattle correctly.
And Paul Allen did that with a mediocre Seahawks team that just got rid of Rick Myers. So the fact that Paul Allen was able to do that with a bad football team is actually even more impressive.
Yeah, the Dennis Erickson years. I will say that the other thing about it is I don't think people liked Howard Schultz. There was a lot of talk that Howard Schultz was not really liked in a lot of circles when it came to the rich elite of Seattle. From what I heard, that he rubbed people the wrong way, and especially when it came to some of the politicians, where he tried to. Instead of coming to them correctly and just say, hey, here's what's going on. Is there any chance that I can get relief? He was basically trying to strong arm them behind closed doors. And, a guy like Frank Chop, who, ran the state house, was like, nope.
Frank. Yeah. If you're going to get anything past their Frank Chop, you better kiss a lot of butt, because that's what at least Paul Allen was able to do. He knew how to play the game, but Howard Schultz, he's not good with politics. That's what I've learned from him. And there's a reason why he's a nationally hated figure. And when he tried running for president, literally everyone laughed at him on both sides because they knew that he couldn't play the politics.
Right.
So I
want to switch. Go ahead.
I mean, the only thing that Howard Schultz, he's built a good Starbucks coffee business. I'll give him that. With the exception of the fact I would not pay $5 for a cup of coffee, though. But
right, I mean, he convinced the world that it was okay to spend $5 on a cup of coffee that you can make for 15 cents in your own house. But I digress. A lot of white chicks like pumpkin spice, so there you go. I wanted to ask you how you got into Seattle sports content to begin with. What was that moment where you said, this is something that I want to take onto social media? Did you have a creative mindset to begin with anyways? Or was it just something that you were already on social media and you were like, okay, I think I found this little niche where I can create some of this content? What got you into content creation?
It was around 2017 or even as soon as 15. I was really thinking about making content because it all started, maybe I might even say, yeah, 2015 is about accurate, because there was a book I read called Shipwrecked, written by John Wells, and that's where I got to learn about all the Mariners behind the scenes stuff that I didn't even know about. Like, I didn't know the complexities of that Tino trade, didn't know about that Lou Pennell had that much beef, didn't know that there was an A-Rod side to the story on he left Seattle, and it was a lot more complicated than him like, oh, I'm just leaving because Texas gave me money. It was more than just that. So because of all of that, I wanted to do content for years to cover all of the whole Mariners nostalgia that no one talks about. But I just never I didn't even know what to do. I sat on it for 5 years of I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with it. Didn't even know how to approach it. Didn't even know how to do a script writing because throughout school, I was always criticized by my professors and teachers for my lackluster writing, and I'd let that always live rent free. But then it wasn't until 22 when I realized so many of these small YouTubers started coming in, and some of the ones that inspired me was like Urinating Tree. He's a big YouTuber from Pittsburgh. He has like 600,000. And I guess as time went on, I saw all my other friends doing it and my own cousin having his own YouTube channel. That's where it was around September of 22 when I finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. Just going to wing it. Just learn as I go. And now, since then, like, I've actually been, sometimes I give people advice on how they wanted to start their YouTube channel.
Sure.
And goals of the channel, of course, is I want us, you and I and others, to build a community where every opinion is allowed, because I've noticed from other content creators and other Seattle journalists, you've seen it, I've seen it. Some of my friends have seen it, and they've gotten on my butt about, hey, you shouldn't be beefing with everyone. But I want to create like a community of ourselves where we could have, like, we can allow any Mariner fan to say whatever they want. Like, they can even say Scott Service is a great manager. Like, we don't think so, but if they want to say it on our chats, we're not going to block them over it and be offended.
Yeah,
like, we're trying to. I want to bring back the whole free speech of sports community, where people can say anything without being blocked or feeling like they're going to get canceled.
Yeah, that's the bizarre twist of social media, because especially in today's day and age where everybody, it almost feels like it doesn't matter the topic. It always feels like there's always certain people pitted against certain people. And when you see some of this discord online, you'll see people come at people passive aggressively or just aggressively, like, hey, you're wrong, this, that, and the other. Or if you just share an opinion, and as you said, all of a sudden you got blocked. And that's something that I find absolutely ridiculous. And of course, you've dealt with that. As a matter of fact, I think you dealt with that today, of expressing opinion that wasn't that big of a deal. Like, I don't think it was that big of a deal. And then of course you get blocked. And I personally think that I'll give you a good example. Like, if I interact with somebody on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and I think that their comment is an unintelligent comment, I'm not going to block anybody. I'll just not respond, because I don't want to get into a conversation.
You want to get into a back and forth thing where it goes nowhere, and it doesn't even affect anyone.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Plus, it's going to take a hard left turn, and I want to avoid that, because I don't want to end up saying something to somebody that I don't know. That's not something that I want to get into. But the crazy thing is, like, I saw when you got blocked by the dude from Locked On, and then of course you got and then it was Mr. Prospect Insider himself today over something that he took great offense to, and it's like, well, you don't like the Seattle Times and you don't like their writers, and it's like, okay, whatever. That's not that to me, that's not that big of a deal.
And plus, that's actually, and the Seattle Times doesn't exactly have a positive reputation, but there are some out there that, I mean, I don't blame him for what he does, because he does work in an industry where he doesn't really have the freedom to like agree with me, because that could be because he's in a circle where he has to play that game. So I don't blame him for doing that. Do I like what he did? Of course not, but it's just the way it is, which is why we have small content creators like us, where we're allowing any opinion we want. Like, even the ones that say, even if someone says John Stanton is a fantastic owner, do it. Like, and I want to hear it at least just so I can get a laugh out of it. Like, I won't agree with it, but I'll be like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but I don't agree with you, but it's cool.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand the Seattle Times is just a vehicle for Mariners, for Mariners PR. If you remember, the Mariners have been known to pull credentials of reporters for reporting truth. Jeff Baker, who used to be a beat writer for the Times, he still is, but with the Kraken now, but he used to be the Mariners beat writer for the Times, and he had his credential pulled for telling the honest truth. And of course, the Mariners hate any type of negative press, because obviously they're trying to sell a ballpark experience. They're not necessarily selling baseball, they're selling their ballpark. And anybody that has anybody with that type of platform, they're gonna send a message by saying, hey, listen, either you toe the company line or we'll pull your credential. And of course, home dude for the TNT, who got his credential pulled for reporting Ken Griffey Jr. was sleeping in the clubhouse in 2010. He had his credential pulled as well too. That's why I got into Mariner content creator. I've been doing radio since 2013, 14. I used to do it on Everett's 1380 KRKO, and I used to do it nationally for a national baseball station. But the crazy thing is, sometime around 2016, and it might have even been when the Mariners were purchased by Stanton, I noticed there was this hard twist, or this hard turn, where everything was positive at everything that they did, even in losses. The Root Sports crew was always looking for a positive spin on even some of the most embarrassing losses. And it drove me batshit crazy, because it's like, dude, just be honest. Like that, you can say that was a bad loss. No harm in saying it, because it was a bad fucking loss, and you don't need to puff it, and you don't need to spin it. And I used to sit there and talk with Swanee on Facebook Messenger all the time about, how is Root Sports going to spin this loss, or, what are the Mariners going to tell their players to say post game, and what Scott Service going to have to, what positive attributes is he's going to have to explain with a 15 strikeout performance, and the Mariners ended up losing. And it just drove me batshit crazy, to the point where we just decided to do this show because we're the anti Root Sports. You know what I mean? Like we are. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're just going to tell you exactly what the fuck is going on. And that is it. And we're not going to if you've noticed on social media, there are people that will attack you for pointing out the truth of their favorite players. Like if you say something about Cal Raleigh, as he was before the series, he was 1 for 21 at one point, and he was absolutely disgusting. If you would say that about Cal Raleigh, these people would come and attack you like you were talking about their mother or something like that. You know what I mean? Or somebody that was close to him. And it's like, that's, the Mariners have fostered this weird PC progressive, always sunny in Philadelphia or always sunny in Seattle type atmosphere, where it's like, you can't just come in and say, hey, yeah, that was terrible. You know what I mean? Like that's unacceptable now. And I was just like, dude, we're not doing this anymore at all.
And I think the numbers kind of prove I looked at my analytics that majority of my fan base is actually from Houston, most of Texas and New York, because I guess they feed off again with those people that have the more honest approach. And it's why that I've actually made some friends in the Houston community, because at least I'm the one fan that doesn't try to trash talk with them. Like when Houston's like, hey, your team kind of stinks, I'm like, yep. Yeah. So it's like, I give them nothing to fight about. Like, it's just the truth. And I'm probably the only Mariner fan out there that actually was disappointed in Julio, how he handled the Hector Neris situation, where he allowed the media to completely blow it up. And deep down, we know that Seattle Times blew that up because the Mariners needed a scapegoat, because they needed to cover up the fact that they were choking throughout choking throughout the last 10 games. They needed a media distraction.
Well, but they also need clicks as well too. So they need to sensationalize things when they need to sensationalize things. And that's a stark difference, because you mentioned the East Coast, New York. There's a reason why fans have a championship mentality, because that's what the Yankees do. They win championships. They've won 27 of them. And so when your team is not performing, those fans will take the club to task, and they require them to operate at a high level, because it's championships or nothing. The Mariners themselves have never won a damn thing in their life. The last division title was in 2001. And yes, they made the playoffs a couple of years ago, but it had been 22 years since they had done that. And, fans are used to mediocrity in Seattle. So if you have, like, last year was the funniest thing. They won 88 games and they completely choked, and yet fans were happy because, hey, it's a winning season. Well, what did you win? Sure, tell me, what did you win? Participation trophies is not, like, that's not winning. You know what I mean? Moral victories are not moral, and that's the difference. And I hate calling out Seattle fans, but that, like, they are the, like, I hate to say it, but they are some of the worst fans in professional sports because they accept mediocrity as it's like something, because we just have not seen winning in 20 years, 25 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's been that long since we've seen consistent winning.
And they dare to say, like, if you challenge the Mariners, if you dare to say Julio swings too much, you are immediately a bandwagon fan. Like, like, sure. I'm probably the only Mariner fan that actually, it's hard to say it, but I actually like Yordan Alvarez over Julio Rodriguez in terms of the bat, because Alvarez is more disciplined at the plate. Julio, he's a talented guy. He's a great guy. He could easily be franchise player of the future, which he is. He just tries to hit a home run every single time. And it's like there was a time, I think, when the bases were loaded today, he could have just easily walked in a run, but instead he played chase ball. Yeah. Because he just couldn't help it.
I think you and I are both in agreement that we're waiting for Lazaro Montes to get to Seattle to challenge Julio for Mariners supremacy of who's going to be the star team of the future moving forward, because Lazaro Montes he's going to be the real deal. But I'll say this, and before we go, I just want your opinion on this. As we're basically trashing weak Mariners fans, the funniest thing is I think the Seattle Times, Adam Jude, had this report about the marine layer, the early season marine layer as an excuse for why the Mariners aren't hitting in the month of April. And somebody countered it by saying, well, wait a second, because Robinson Cano was able to hit here. Nelson Cruz,
2000 Edgar Martinez, Brett Boone.
A-Rod, Ichiro, and then he was also saying, it's like, yeah, but Rafael Palmeiro hit here too. Mike Trout hits here, and it's like, stop making excuses for ownership's inability to spend on good players. Good players hit, mediocre players have the performances of like what you're seeing. And I thought it was funny because it was true. It's like, that is the nexus of it, where you actually have a vehicle of the Mariner PR making excuses for an owner that simply is not willing to spend money on upper echelon players. I was just curious to find out how you felt about that.
I've been saying that for years. Like, and did anyone forget that the Mariners already brought in the fences in 2013 to complement for the likes of Mike Morse and the returning Raul Ibanez? Like you've already said it. Like, Mike Trout doesn't have a problem. Cano didn't have a problem. Ohtani doesn't have a problem here. Heck, even Dan Vogelbach didn't have a problem in 2019 at least. So I don't like it when we have the media protecting the Mariners by saying, oh, it's our own stadium's fault. It's the thick air, which I do think the thick air, there is truth to it, that we do have really thick air, but it doesn't mean always try to hit home runs. Always try to go around things. Like, look at Houston. They have a lot of guys that can easily hit home runs, but on Friday, they choose to play the small ball because it would mess with the Mariners very much, and it did. So,
but also, if you remember back to the early years of Safeco Field, in 2000 and late 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, that early in the season you would see Lou Piniella, aggressively moving runners over, playing the hit and run, playing more National League small ball in the early portion of the season, because of course it's like, maybe the ball hangs up a little more in April than it does in May. But that being said, eventually those fly balls are probably going to go out. But in the meantime, we still have to win ball games. So we still have to manufacture runs and, manufacture a way to win ball games. And that's the funny, that's the funniest thing. It's like, good managers and good GMs know how to adapt to certain situations in order to win ball games. And yet it seems like for the third straight year, it's just the same chaos ball.
They're just trying to victimize the Mariners on just all over one metric when they can easily make up for the other. Like even 2001 Brett Boone, he only hit 3 home runs in April, but he was still batting over 300 with 21 RBIs. So there are other ways to make an offense. Like you don't have to just keep relying on home runs to win the game. And if you are just relying on home runs, that's the stuff, the mindset that's not going to get you not only not to the World Series, but not even the playoffs. And that's what the Mariners did last year, was they live and die by home runs. Like Teoscar was a live and die by the home run, which is why I do prefer Mitch Haniger over him, because at least for the most part, he doesn't try to hit a bomb every single time.
Right. I totally agree. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by and being the first guest on the Sunday special. So before you take off, why don't you tell fans a little bit about what's coming up, what's on your plate, and where they can find you?
Well, find me on Rooftop Sports, and you can even have conversations with me. And I do have all the links on my YouTube channel to talk to me on Instagram, talk to me on Twitter, or even argue with me on Twitter if you want to. And I do welcome that. Now, granted, I can handle the replies a lot better, but still working on it. But if you guys do want to follow that, go ahead and do that. And next game that I am going to cover, because we didn't even talk about the fact that we do our own, I do my own live play-by-plays, because I was saying for years, like, man, I can't stand Dave Sims. I can't stand Goldsmith. I can only stand Rick Riz. So, and there's that old saying, well, put your money where your mouth is. If I think I can do better, which I'm doing, I may not agree with how they do it. So I'm trying to put my hat in it on the ring to prove if I can do any better. And for the most part, I've been trying to make time as much as I can, but day job thing is a thing. So at least until then, I do the best I can to make time. But the best time I usually make for a play-by-play is usually Friday nights. And I'm going to do the Mariners and Oakland game. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And throughout the entire season, hoping to do some more play-by-plays, because they are fun. Like, whether people donate or not, it is a blast to cover the games. And I have covered some of the best moments of this season so far. Like, I got the Mitch Garver moment, or I got to make a funny video out of me complaining that George Kirby got pulled, and made a huge montage of that. So I do this whole live thing, not as a way of like, oh, please donate to me. It's also to give fans an opportunity, because the other thing too is Root Sports charges extra, or the cable providers are making you pay extra for Root Sports access. And radio's kind of sparse these days. Like, I don't even know one person that even has a radio on their hand anymore.
Right.
And that you got to pay for MLB the app, or unless you have T-Mobile. But for me, like, the ultimate goal eventually is to be as available as possible for, at most, maybe, hopefully up to 162 games in the future. Now, that's probably a long ways from now, but it is a goal to be the alternative voice of the Seattle Mariners, and would like to see Steve and others of other content creators all grow together and build this small community where fans are always welcome for different opinions. Now, granted, maybe we do come out as we're the opinionated ones, but at least we won't hit the block button.
Right. Or and that's the thing. You want to be able to shoot the shit and have fun on social media and not take it serious without somebody calling you a Mariner fascist. So, well, that's going to do it for us today. I want to thank Rooftop Sports for stopping by, and it was absolutely fun, man. It was good to see your origins on content creation, and I hope to see more nostalgic videos, because again, I think what you're doing is I don't know, like I haven't seen any other content creator go back in the Wayback Machine and relive some of the best moments of Seattle sports. So I do appreciate you for doing that. And so thanks again, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. It's been absolutely fun. you can always catch me on X at Swinging Pod, and hopefully we can have a good talk and shoot the shit, and just have a good time on social media. So this upcoming Tuesday, quickly at I believe at 1:00 will be the normally scheduled Swinging for the Fences, and I think Swanee is back this week. But either way, it's going to be fun. So we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.